ADHD and relationships, what is impacted and what do we actually do about it? This is what we're going to talk about today. I see lots of content all about ADHD and it's usually geared towards the person with ADHD, but what about the person who doesn't have ADHD and they're in a relationship with someone who does, right? I don't see this talked about very often, so today that's what we're talking about, and we're going to talk about practical strategies for how to best manage a relationship in the context of one of those people having ADHD. All right, no funny business here. Let's just jump right in. Here's my diagram. Oh, actually, before we do that, let me introduce myself. My name is Matt. I'm a therapist in private practice. I own a group practice based in New York City. We specialize in ADHD therapy, helping folks deal with ADHD. Our practice name is Progress Therapy, stylized as PRGRS. If you're interested in learning more about the practice, you can click the link down below and check out our website. But we do like to make videos like this to educate folks on ADHD and everything ADHD related. So that's why we're making the video, and let's just jump right back in here. All right. Now, please forgive me. My diagrams are not the best. I am no Picasso. I'm not an artist, but I do like to explain things well, and I think this is one of the best ways to do it. So this first panel here, we're going to display two people. We have the ADHD, the person with ADHD, and then we have the person without over here on the left. Okay. Now, the person with ADHD, they are going to deal with things, right, that are ADHD related. So procrastination, time management issues, executive function challenges. I have other videos talking all about that, right? But those are a few, right? Procrastination, time management, forgetfulness, hyper-focus on certain things, lack of focus on others. These are just, again, I'm kind of spitballing here, but ADHD symptoms. Now, what happens in the context of a relationship is those things obviously impact the relationship. So let's imagine someone is constantly late, right, due to ADHD related issues. Now, this partner is going to be frustrated and upset, right? Or if they constantly forget things or hyper-focus on something and lose track of other engagements with the partner, you can imagine the partner would be upset. Now, what happens is, or what we see often, is that the partner without ADHD ends up feeling frustrated, right? Let me zoom in a little bit. They end up feeling frustrated. Sometimes they'll take on what's this kind of parent role, so like a parent-child role. That will happen. They'll feel confused. They're not exactly sure why these issues keep happening. We might get some compassion fatigue, right? So they feel like their tank of compassion is running dry, and maybe they feel burnt out and they just can't really deal with this much longer. And that might be the experience of the partner without ADHD. Now, we have the partner with ADHD, and I already mentioned some of the symptoms they're dealing with, right? These executive function challenges or other issues related to ADHD. That's one thing, and I don't even have that written out here. But on top of that, another layer is the shame that comes from dealing with those issues and impacting the relationship, the guilt that comes from that, feeling misunderstood. They also end up feeling extremely frustrated because things feel like they don't change, or it feels like the same patterns keep happening. And so at the end of the day, what do we have? We have a relationship where both partners are impacted. They both feel it. But the good news is there are things that we can do to improve this. Not all hope is lost. There's actually a lot of hope here. And this is why I want to bring light to this topic, because I think there's a lot that we can do. All right. So we're going to go through what we're able to do. Here's a high-level overview of what we're going to talk about. This is kind of a spoiler, so let's just go to the first one. All right. So the first thing is education. Okay, and I have that depicted right here. Now, when I talk about educating oneself on ADHD, I'm talking both people have to do this and take responsibility for this. So the person with ADHD needs to understand ADHD really well, and the person without it should also understand and learn about ADHD. And I don't just mean watching a couple TikTok videos or reading a couple of articles online, but really a deep dive, a research basically, right, on ADHD. I often recommend people read about ADHD from a variety of different angles. So for example, we have people like Russell Barkley, or Dr. Russell Barkley, who's one of the leading researchers in the field. He'll often take the angle of ADHD as a disability and talk about it from that perspective. And then we have someone like Dr. Edward Hallowell, who kind of takes the approach of ADHD as a superpower. Two very different approaches. But the point here, and if you need a place to start, these are two people that I would recommend, because again, they have two different angles and they're both respected in the field. And when I talk about educating oneself on ADHD, it's really helpful to have a broad kind of depth It doesn't make sense. To have a broad, you should read broadly and go beyond the surface. So go deeper. And what you'll begin to do is you'll get a better understanding of ADHD. You'll understand it from different angles. And what will really benefit us is understanding what ADHD is and what it isn't. And the way we begin to discern this better and better is by having a better understanding of what it is. And so that's the first thing I want people to do. And I want both partners to do this. All right. So number one is going on a bit of a knowledge journey or a research journey. Okay. Number two, this is another strategy where I want to encourage the person with ADHD to begin taking ownership of the methodologies or taking ownership of the issues that are kind of happening in the relationship. And we'll give an example in a second. And also taking ownership of what could be done about it. All right. So, for example, when it comes, if we scroll back here, people with the ADHD, the person with ADHD in the relationship often ends up kind of feeling shame, guilt, all these things. And what can happen is they don't end up, let's say they deal with forgetfulness. So every time they go to the store, they forget what their partner asked them to get, or every time the partner asks them to remember something, they forget. Small things over and over again can make the other partner feel really frustrated, really upset. And now they feel shamed and guilty. And what will happen is they'll do this thing where they just try harder, or they just won't let it happen again. But nothing actually gets addressed, and it just keeps happening over and over again. But there's a lot of shame here, so it's really hard to take ownership of this. But my challenge is, and let's use that as an example, the forgetfulness. So the dynamic that begins to occur beforehand is this kind of like manager-managee kind of relationship, or parent-child relationship, where the partner without ADHD is constantly asking the person to remember and saying, how did you forget? You have to remember. And then the person with ADHD feels really bad because now it just feels like you're being micromanaged, and you feel like I'm not really an adult, and just all these dynamics begin to play out. But when it doesn't ever get addressed actively, the person without ADHD feels like they're the ones having to manage that issue, okay? But the shift that needs to occur is the person with ADHD, depicted by this person right here, they will begin to take ownership and come up with a plan and not present it like a presentation, but they will say, hey, I know that this is something I deal with. I have a plan right here. And, I have other videos talking about what we do about the executive function issues, right? Maybe the plan is to always carry a list with them, or to set reminders. I mean, there's a variety of things we can do. This video is not about the plans. And they'll say, hey, this is what I'm really working on, and I want to share this with you. So number one, I'm proactive about this and I'm working on it. And number two, it's also for accountability. And what begins to shift here is that the person with ADHD is now managing their own issues and their own symptoms. And the person without ADHD doesn't end up feeling like they're the ones responsible or having to manage. And this shift in the relationship, it can be monumental. Something as simple as taking ownership of a common issue, or an issue that you deal with frequently, and then coming up with a plan and being the one to present that and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do about it. Okay, that can really, really help. Moving on to strategy number 3 are what I would like to call weekly check-ins, as if that's some sort of mind-blowing title, right? Weekly check-ins. This could be really helpful. So again, what happens in these relationships is that things continuously get swept under the rug. So I forgot the bread at the store for the 100th time. And the one partner's mad and upset because you forgot again, and now it just looks like you're not listening to me, and that issue gets swept under the rug, and we don't talk about it again until the next time it happens, and that pile under the rug gets bigger and bigger, okay? And it never actually goes away, and now the carpet is mounted, to the ceiling. So what we need to do is set up weekly check-ins. And one thing to keep in mind is this is not just for the person with ADHD. The person without ADHD is also in this relationship actively participating. So the check-in is for them as well. It should be equal, not lopsided. It's not a check-in for the person with ADHD specifically. Weekly check-ins work for any sort of relationship. And so I just want to make sure people understand that. All right, so we're not just checking in about ADHD issues, but that becomes a part of it. So let's just say, for example, an issue happens on Monday, right, where the partner with ADHD does forget something at the store and the other partner is very upset. We might not have time to talk about it that day, right? But rather than getting it swept under the rug, if we have a weekly check-in, let's say on Thursdays, every evening on Thursday evenings, that becomes something we talk about. It's already on the calendar, so we're not avoiding it. We're not, sweeping it under the rug, but we have a time and a place to address it. So weekly check-ins could be really good, and they could be times to check in about issues that have been happening, things that are working, things that are not working. You can be creative with what the check-ins consist of, but this can be really, really helpful to prevent, again, things getting swept under the rug. And another strategy that I think is really, really helpful, and this comes from DBT, so it's a little bit hard to grasp sometimes. It's one of these more heady concepts. But it's reality acceptance, or accepting reality. And this can come from some of the research and knowledge that you gain from reading or doing some in-depth study on ADHD. But it's important to know that ADHD does not go away. Okay, and it's not like all the issues that the person with ADHD deals with are one day going to go away, or they're going to work so hard that all of it's going to go away. So to some degree, there has to be a level of acceptance from both people that ADHD is a part of the equation and most likely always will be. Now, that doesn't mean that we resign and we just accept the way things are. People can get better and ADHD symptoms can improve greatly. That's why we do what we do. But there is an element of accepting reality, that ADHD is real, it has real issues, it comes with real symptoms, and that will be a part of the relationship. And both people in the relationship have to practice accepting that as reality. And when I find people do this, the relationship actually improves. We might think it's kind of like giving up or not trying anymore, but it's the opposite. In fact, when this begins to happen, the relationship improves, and people are often willing to work even harder on both sides to make the relationship work. So I just wanted to share those four strategies? No, that was 4 strategies with you. I hope you found it helpful. I hope you learned something. At the end of the day, if you're interested in learning more about our practice in ADHD therapy, you can click the link down below, check out our website, and that's pretty much it. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.